We are on live. Yeah, over to you.
Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 50th edition of Geek Night Coimbatore. Geek Night is a monthly event to promote sharing of technical knowledge and increase collaboration amongst geeks in Coimbatore. It's organized by a passionate group of programmers and is sponsored by ThoughtWorks. It's an open forum for both presenters and participants. If you want to be a speaker at Geek Night, please use the link we'll be posting in the chat. You can use that to register as a speaker. First up, we have Shaktivel from ThoughtWorks. He's an application developer. He will be presenting on container essentials. We will be monitoring the YouTube chat for questions. In case you have any questions, please drop them in the YouTube chat. On to you, Shakti.
Thank you, Nandita. I'll just quickly share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Welcome everyone for the 50th edition of Geek Night. So today, I'll be presenting a topic on container essentials. So what is container essentials? So we are going to talk about the building blocks that makes a container possible. So we are not going to deep dive into Docker or any other container, but we are going to understand what is the technology that makes container possible using Linux. So I'll quickly go over to the agenda. So to get started, we will try to understand the evolution of virtualization. So what was there during the beginning and where we are now, and followed by a couple of demos, not couple, maybe like more demos in understanding how containers are implemented. And when we take a look at like how containers are implemented, we are going to scratch the surface of some of the things, that is the chroot, namespaces, and C groups. We'll try to understand what these things are, and also we'll see a demo on each and every one of them. Cool. Okay, so a quick introduction from my end. So myself, Shaktivel Vishwanathan. So I'm an application developer in ThoughtWorks. I've been with ThoughtWorks for more than 2 years now. Yeah, with that, we can get into the part where we'll talk about the evolution of virtualization. So virtualization, how was it, the current state of virtualization, how did it evolve? So initially, like maybe a decade or 2 decades back, if you wanted to deploy an application in the web, essentially what we will be doing is like we'll have a server, and on top of the server we'll have a dedicated OS, and that OS will be having a set of binaries and libraries. On top of it, like we'll be deploying application A and application B. So one problem that we can think of with this approach is that most of the time, in case if the application is requiring a different binary or libraries, it will be harder for us to manage different applications within the same server. And most of the time, the server may not be fully utilized for the application that is running. Most of the time, like there will be wastage of resources, and the hard disk will be will be there without any usage, and it will be on-prem. So this got evolved into virtual machines. So in the slide to the right side, right, like we have server, we have host OS, and then the hypervisor concept came into the picture. So hypervisor is something that you will install on the host OS. So there are 2 types of hypervisors basically. You will install the hypervisor, and on top of that, you will be able to install a virtual machine. So the virtual machine can have any type of OS. It can have a Windows OS, it can have a Linux OS, and you can run application OS specific application on top of it with the help of the VM. So what is the advantage? The advantage is you can run multiple OS on top of the server, on top of a single server, using virtual machines. But the major disadvantage with this approach is there will always be a layer in between the server and the application that you are running. So any request, any process level interaction that needs to happen needs to go via hypervisor, which is something that impacts the performance as well, and there will be a performance degradation. And then came the containers. So what is a container? So if you talk about containers, right, the first thing that comes to our mind is Docker. So what is container? So containers are similar to VMs on a very high level. Containers are nothing but a packaged computing environment which provides isolation. Okay, so you can deploy multiple applications on top of Docker, but the applications will not be able to see the other applications process, and you can also limit the memory that an application can use, and all those things are all those things are an advantage of container. So basically it actually packages a number of process, and it helps in portability as well. So the major advantage over virtual machine is that the ability to port a container and the ability to scale, which is not something which is a challenging one in terms of in the VM world. And the last point that I wanted to make is the containers are not a replacement to hypervisors. So many always think that, okay, containers are something that is a replacement for VM, but containers are not a replacement. But both these things solve a different problem. And today in our session, we are going to understand how containers are implemented. As I stated earlier, like, we are going to look at three different things. Before we get into that, this is one of the famous or a popular tweet by Jerome. So Jerome is a pioneer in the Docker world. So containers are nothing but a bunch of processes. Okay, so born from tarballs, anchored by namespaces, and controlled by C groups. So you'll be able to understand this tweet when we try to understand what is how we are able to develop container with the help of the Linux tools and Linux features, the namespaces and C groups. Okay, so yeah, to begin with, we are going to see these things. So what is a C root? So these are all something that is already available in the Linux kernel, and this doesn't have any special libraries or framework that needs to be installed. These things comes as part of the Linux kernel itself. So first is the change root. So as a name implies, right, it helps in changing the root directory. We'll also try to understand what a root directory is and how the file system is there in the Linux. And the next part that we'll be covering is the namespaces. So namespaces is responsible for controlling what can be seen, and the C groups. So C groups control what kind of resources that a particular process can use, and C groups make sure that the process doesn't use resources beyond its limit or the limit that we specify. Okay. Okay, so we'll get into the part ch root. So what is ch root? So before we get into ch root, like, we will try to understand the file system of Linux. So the Linux, there will be a root directory available, which is denoted by the /, and these are all the bunch of folders that is available from the root directory. So we have the temp directory for storing the temporary files, bin directory, which will have all the binaries, and the boot directory, which will have the boot related files, device, etc for configuration management, home folders, library for the library files, and then we have other folders as well. And we also have this proc folder. So an interesting thing about the proc folder is responsible for holding all the files which are related to the process and the system information. So we will be using this proc file a little deeper in order to understand ch root, namespaces, and then C groups. So as per the definition, so what is C group? So now we know, like, the file structure in a Debian file system or Linux, like, what is ch root? So as per the document, the description from Linux manual pages, ch root changes the root directory of a calling process to the path that you specify in the command. And this root directory is also inherited by all the children of the calling process. So what it means is when you execute a process, and when you execute the process with the help of ch root, the path that you pass in the ch root will be taken as a root directory. So even though the file system is having a root directory, the path, the directory that you provide when you execute this ch root will be taken up as the root directory. Okay, so we'll just quickly go over a simple, uh, simple demo.
Yeah, before that, Shaktivel, there are a couple of questions like
Sure.
what is hypervisor?
Okay, so hypervisor is nothing but an application which facilitates to install multiple OS on your server. So let's say like your server will have a host OS. If you take a Windows operating system, the server will have a host OS. And if you wanted to run other operating systems in your machine, you will need to install hypervisor. You might have heard about Oracle VirtualBox, virtual VM, parallels. All these things are nothing but the hypervisor. So the hypervisor are actually two types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is basically something that you install directly on the server, and we almost use type 2 hypervisor in many of the places. Even in my machine, I have this virtual box, which is a type 2 hypervisor installed so that I can run Linux operating system on top of my machine. Okay. So did it help, Shrikesh?
Yeah, Shaktivel. So like one more question is around what is Docker versus RKT container?
So both are the runtime. So Docker is nothing but a runtime actually. So Docker provides all the necessary APIs for you to run a container. Similarly, like RKD also provides runtime, with which like you will be able to run containers. So that's nothing but a runtime. Okay.
Okay, Shaktivel. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into my virtual machine. So I'm just going to have two terminals. Okay, so we'll talk about the list of files over here, and before that, let's take a look at the file system. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a fake root directory. So you might have already seen that the root directory in Linux is in this structure. It will have a root directory, and we have all the executables or the folders under this root directory. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a fake root directory, and this fake root directory is going to have a structure similar to this list of folders. So in order for me to run some executables, what I need to do is like I need to create some folders. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create the binary folders and the library related folders here. So I'm going to start with bin. I'm going to start with and I'm going to start with lib64. So these are nothing but the folders that are required, which holds all the library files for executing certain executables. So what essentially I'm doing here is I'm just creating folders bin lib64 inside this fake root directory. If you see that the directories are all created, and the next thing what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy certain executables. Okay, to begin with, I'm just going to copy the bin directory from my host, and I'm going to put it inside bin. Okay, it is supposed to be a copy command. So it actually asks for the executable, and now similarly with similar to bash, I'm also going to copy a different executable ls. So if I go and see inside the fake root directory and bin, I see bash and ls added. So the problem with bash and ls added into this fake root is that it cannot be executed now because all the dependent library files are not currently all the dependent library files are currently not added into this fake root. So in order for me to copy that, what I'm going to do is like, I'm just going to execute a script. Okay, so this script will facilitate copying all the dependent library files into the lib folders that we saw earlier. So the folder that I'm going to copy, so before that, I need to know like what are all the dependencies that's there for bin bash. So these are all the library dependencies that is there for this executable. And if you see here, this is similar to the directory structure that we created earlier. So these files are all within lib x86-64, and also we also have another file inside lib64. So this command is going to copy all these shared libraries into the fake root lib folders. Okay. So I'm going to execute the script that I have, and I'm going to say to the script that copy all the shared libraries of bin bash into fake root lib x, the Linux GNU. Now this is copied, but except for the fact that the lib64 needs to be copied manually, and I'll just copy that as well. Okay, and I'm going to put it inside fake directory lib64. Okay, these are all copied, and let's try to see what's there inside the fake root lib folder. Okay, inside X. Okay, we all have all the dependent files. So this is the time that I'm going to use this chroot command. If you could remember like what we did, we created a fake root directory. We copied the executables bash and ls into the fake root, and then we copied all the library dependencies. So now I'm going to use the command chroot fake root, and then I'm going to execute bin bash. So this bin bash is already there within fake root, and I'm able to execute that. Okay, so I am able to execute that because this chroot is capable of changing the root directory for a particular process, and this fake root is now changed as the root directory for this bin bash. So with this, now I'm going to do what I'm going to do is like I'm going to list all the files, but I will see an error. So the reason being, we copied all the library dependencies for bin bash, but we did not copy it for ls. Okay, so I'm going to exit it. I'm just going to do the same thing. So before I do that, I'm just going to look at the dependency file for ls. It will give me all these things, and I'm going to execute the bin bash copy script. And I'm going to say that copy all the shared libraries for the ls command and put it inside fake root lib folder. Okay, so this is all copied. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to execute this change root on top of the fake root directory. Okay, and now if I press ls, I will be able to see the command that is getting executed, and this lists me all the folders inside fake root. If I try to execute a different command, let's say ps or remove, it will say that the command is not found. So meaning that this fake root directory doesn't have all those executions or the executables in there, and it is not able to execute. So why do we need chroot? So chroot is an important tool in Linux, which makes a process imagine that it is executing privately, and it is executing in such a way that it is executing on top of the root folders. This is container technology. In if you are deploying a container, and if you want the process to not make changes to the root directory, and the chroot takes care of making sure that the process doesn't change the actual root directory, but it only changes the fake root directory or the root directory that is assigned to it. Okay, so now we are able to understand what this chroot is, but there is one problem with this approach. Okay, so let's execute a process called top inside the virtual directory. So this is So this top is nothing but a task manager, or this is something that shows current processes that is running. And yeah, before we get into that, we have created this fake root. And for the further discussion on the further demos, I'm going to use a folder called rootfs. So we'll just quickly look at what rootfs has. So the rootfs folder is nothing but a directory, and inside the rootfs we have a similar directory to a Debian file system. If you see here, like we also have bin, boot, dev, etc. All these things are already there in the rootfs folder. So this imagine that this rootfs is nothing but an image, a Docker image, which will be executed inside a container. That's the imagination that we need to have, and it's similar. If you find a way to extract that image, you will see that the image is having the file system similar to a Debian file system. Okay, so with that, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to execute the change root again on top of the rootfs folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to execute the bash script. Okay, so this is running without any problem. And the next step that I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at all the process that is running. That is, I mean, like filtering all the process top. So one thing that we can notice here is there are two processes coming in. One is the top, and then the other is grep top. So grep top is something that we can ignore because that is nothing but this process. But we can also see the top process, which is executing in a different shell altogether. Okay. In the container world, even though like I execute a process and I make a process to think that this root directory is where it is executing, it is important to make sure that the process should not be able to access the process that is running in other shell or the host operating system. In this case, the process that we ran is able to see all the process that is running in the host operating system. And if I try to kill this, it will just kill the process that is running in the host. Okay, so how do we solve this problem? And that is where the Linux kernel feature namespaces comes into the picture. Okay, so what is namespaces? So namespaces control what a process can see. So we took a look into the chroot, and now we are in a problem where the process can access the host operating process, and it can also look at the other executing process. So we want to control that. The next step that we are going to do is try and understand what namespaces are. I'll just quickly pass here in case of any questions. Shrikesh, do we have any questions?
No questions yet, Shakti.
Cool. Thanks, Nandita. Then probably we can continue. So the next topic that we are going to take a look at is namespaces. So what is namespaces? Okay. So namespaces, as we discussed earlier, right? Namespace is a kernel feature that helps controlling the visibility and isolation of a resource. Resource in the sense like the process, what a process can see and what a process can access is controlled by this feature called namespaces. So namespaces make it appear in such a way that namespaces make a process appear that it has its own isolated copy of the given resource. So the process will think that it is executing in a space where it is the only process that is executing, or it will also be able to see the process, the child process and its associated process, but it will not be able to see the process that is running outside the namespace. So that's this feature, and this enables that making a process private or making an isolated copy of a process is achieved using this feature called namespace. As I said earlier, it has the process effectively will think that it has its own private copy, but that's not the case. And coming to namespaces, right? We are going to see two commands, the unshare and the nsenter. So we will understand what these commands when we go over the demos, and ideally, like if we are able to picturize that namespaces are responsible for the isolation of process, that should be fine for now. Okay, and there are different types of namespaces available in the Linux kernel. So the namespaces that are available are mount, UTS, cgroup, IPC, PID, network, and user. So these are all having their own purpose in the Linux world. So when we start with mount, right, it helps the isolation of file system mount points. And UTS is responsible for the domain name and the host name. You don't need to worry too much about all these things, but if we understand the concept behind namespaces, that should be fine enough. And also the C group, right? C group is responsible for isolating the resources. IPC helps in the inter-process communication. PID is nothing but the process identifier namespace, which makes it possible that a particular process makes it possible to run a particular process in a dedicated namespace. And then the network interfaces. So in the containerized world, a bunch of containers need to reuse the network interfaces that is already available. So the network namespaces comes into the picture when multiple containers wants to share the network that is there in the host operating system. And then finally the user namespace. So this is for isolating the user identifier and the group identifier numbers in Linux kernel. So we will take a look at two of these namespaces. We'll just quickly go through a small demo to how to create a namespace and how the process level isolation is achieved. So for that, we are going to use two commands. So the unshare command. So the unshare command offered by Relax is used for creating a namespace. And in case if I wanted to create a process in its own dedicated namespace, I could go for the unshare command. What if I want my process to be executed in an already existing namespace? That is where I use the nsenter command. Okay, unshare is used for creating, and nsenter is used for entering into a namespace that is already existing. Okay, I'll just quickly pause in case of any questions.
No questions, Shakti.
Cool, thanks, Nandita. Okay, so we will we will actually go through a small demo. So it's not too much. What we are going to do is we are going to take a look at what this unshare command has in store for us, followed by what is this nsenter command has in store for us. And we are also going to take a look at like how can we isolate a process. The problem that we saw earlier, right? I was able to execute a process in another shell, and this process, even though the chroot changed the root directory, the process was still able to see the other resources that are executing in a different or in the host machine. So that isolation we'll do it in a demo. And we also use nsenter, wherein like we'll also see how the process can share namespaces and how we can leverage that. So this is the demo that we will see. Okay, so we will get started with the first one, the UTS namespace. Okay, so before we get into all that, we'll just take a look at the help command for unshare. So the unshare is having these many options available, and the one thing that we need to notice is this part. So it says like if you wanted to create a mount namespace, you can use the option -m, UTS-u, and similarly for all the other namespaces. Okay, C groups is not listed here. The version that I'm not using doesn't support creating a C group, but all the other namespaces are listed over here. And this is another special thing that we will be using down the line, where like if you wanted to create a PID namespace, we have to fork a process, and then we have to mount the directory. We'll get into that part a little later. This unshare command, I think it should be pretty clear. So we'll see a quick demo on how to use unshare command and create a UID namespace. Use the Unix. 1 second. So the UTS namespace, that is the Unix timestamp system namespace. So this namespace is responsible for the host name and the domain name related things in the Linux kernel. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to print the host name of my shell, and it says that CFSN. So I'm just going to clear this, and I'm just going to type host name, and it also says that it is CFSN. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, so every namespace when we execute a process, right, a process will always have the list of namespaces associated. For example, to print the process, right, I'll just use this command. So the process that is running here is the process ID that is running is 30546, which is nothing but the bash script. And what I can do is, like, I can see the list of namespaces for this process ID inside the proc folder. So if you remember, we talked about proc folder. Proc folder is responsible for having the system and the process and the system related information. So I'm just going to look at all the namespaces associated with the process. So what I am doing is I am just listing out all the files within this proc folder for this current process that is executing. Okay, so if you see here, these are all the list of namespaces that is associated for this process, and this is the same for the other shell as well. Okay, so if I execute it here, this will also say that these are all the namespaces associated. And one quick thing that we need to look at is this identifier for the UTS namespace. So if you see here, the UTS namespace and this UTS namespace has the same identifier, which means both of these processes are sharing the same namespace. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a new namespace using the unshare command, and I am going to run bin bash on top of it. So now a new namespace for the UTS has been created. How can I see that? I can use the same command, proc $, the process number, and then the ns. So if I see here, the identifier for UTS has changed. Okay, because I created a new namespace for this shell, and all the other things remains the same. All the other identifier for the namespaces remains the same, but only the UTS has changed. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change the host name of this bash to hostname Geeknight November, and the host name would have been changed. The host name has changed to Geeknight November. And if I go and print the host name in the other shell, it will still be CFSIN. It is easier to infer, right? Because this is executing in a new namespace and this is executing in the old namespace. The host name still remains the same, but in the case of here, so the namespace is a different one, and it was able to isolate that host name. Okay, so one quick thing that I would like to state here is when you create a namespace from a process, all the information that is already there will get inherited, unless and until if you change explicitly for the new namespace, it will remain the same. That's why when we executed host name for the first time, it was CFSIN, and when we changed it, it got reflected only in this shell, but not in this shell. And okay, so now we know like how to create a namespace, but how to enter a namespace that is already existing. So for that, what we are going to do is, like, we are going to use this ns enter command. I'm just going to clear this, and I'm going to enter ns enter and then help. We'll just quickly look at some of the option that is providing. Okay, so the option itself says that if you wanted to enter into a mount namespace, use this option. If you wanted to enter into UTS, use these options. And the target is something that's important. So you need to provide a target process ID from which you need to extract the namespace and execute. Okay, in our case, this process needs to enter into this the UTS namespace. So we will use the namespace of this process ID. Okay, so this is what we are going to use. What we will do is we'll just sudo ns enter. I'm just going to provide the target process ID, and I'm going to say that, okay, get the UTS namespace of this process ID and just execute it. Now if I just print the host name, it will say Geeknight November. Okay, so the meaning that it implies is that this process has also entered into the namespace of the process ID 31303. If I list all the namespaces inside the proc for this process, ns, it will say that the namespace identifier has changed. Okay, so this is the I mean, like, this is the high level idea of behind unshare and ns enter, where we could create a namespace and where we could make an existing process enter into an existing namespace. So with that understanding, we'll get into the we'll get into the other implementation. So what I'm going to do now is, so how do we isolate a process is what we are going to look at now. So I'm just going to execute a process stop and bin bash, which will say that which will still be able to read all the processes. So what I'm going to do is, like, I'm just going to execute, and now I am going to use a process process ID namespace. Oops. So process ID namespace, in order for us to create a process ID, PID, process identifier namespace, then we need to use the option -p. I'm just going to clear it, sudo unshare -p. And this special this process identifier namespace needs a special mounting of proc directory. So I will use the mount proc option. What I am essentially saying is that when you execute this namespace, mount the proc folder from the current root directory, which is nothing but rootfs and then the proc folder. Okay, so I'm just creating a namespace, and then I am letting that namespace know that mount the proc folder from this current working directory, and I'm going to run chroot. Okay, so this error you can ignore for now. Since we changed the host name, it is not able to, some dependencies are required for that to execute. Now what I'm going to do is, like, I'm just going to search the process again, and this will not show the process that is running here. Okay, so this is how the process isolation is achieved using the namespaces in Linux kernel. So the containers are all using these APIs for achieving these things. I'll just quickly pause here in case if there are any questions before I move on.
No questions, Shakti.
Cool, thanks, Rikesh. So we saw all these things. We saw how to create, how to use unshare command. We also saw how to use ns enter command, and we also saw how do we create an isolation between processes, and we'll also see how to enter an existing process ID space. Okay, so before that, I'll just change the host name to the same one so that it doesn't create any unnecessary issues. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to execute the same process again, which is nothing but the process that I executed earlier. I'm just creating an unshare. I'm just creating a PID using the unshare command, and I'll just list the number of processes that is running. So this actually lists all the process. So one additional thing that you can notice here is, so with this unshare command, when I execute this, since the process identifier is having a new name, the new namespace, it is starting the process from the identifier 1, 2. But if you see it in the other shell, the process ID will be in the number of thousands, etc., etc. And because of this is sharing a new namespace, it starts from 1. Okay, so in the other shell, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to execute. I'm just going to find or identify the process identifier for the executing bin bash. Okay, this says a list of processes, and we are interested in this bin bash. That is nothing but this this shell. So I'm going to take this process ID, and I'm going to list all the namespaces. Okay, so all these things are this process is having a NS, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use the ns enter command. Okay, what was the process ID? 31784. Okay, I'm just going to say that, okay, ns enter into the process identifier namespace. You have to, okay, before I do that, I just need to provide the target process, which is nothing but this shell. And I'm just going to say that it is the process identifier namespace. And I'm going to unshare. I'm going to create a namespace. So I'm not going to create a namespace, and I'm going to, mount. I'm going to mount the proc directory inside the namespace of this process 31784. Mount proc, the current working directory, root fs, and then the proc directory, and then I'm just going to execute a chroot. Okay, so this all executed without any issues. Now let's take a look at the list of process. Okay, if you see here, so what we did is, so initially when we saw the list of process, we only saw 2 process running. But with this command, so we asked this terminal to enter into the namespace of this process ID 31784, and we provided the mount options, the proc directory mount options, and then we ran the chroot. Now this process has entered into the namespace of this particular shell. And if I am able to, if I execute the list of process, I'll be able to see, I'll be able to see the similar list of process between both these shells. Okay. So this is how the processes or the process isolation is managed. And the point that we saw, right? So we have mount, we have UTS, we have C group. So the Docker or any container runtime leverages the usage of all these namespaces, the namespace commands, and that's how they create an isolation for each of the process. And this is how, like, we are able to achieve the portability when it comes to the container world. Okay. Okay, I'll just quickly pause here in case if anyone has any questions.
There are no questions on YouTube, Shakti.
Thank you, Nandita. So we'll proceed with the last part, that is C groups. So we now saw like how we can change the root directory for a process that is executing. We saw like how we can control a process in such a way that the process will not be able to see other resources that are other processes that are executing using namespaces. So with namespaces, we saw, how to leverage namespaces, and also like how to enter into an existing namespace. And this is all fine and good, but one problem with this is, even though there is an isolation provided, isolation provided for a particular process, there is no restriction for a process to use all the resources of a host operating system. For example, this PSOX, not PSOX, let's say like I'm executing a process, and that process is running in this shell. Even though it's not able to see the other process running, there is nothing stopping it from, there is nothing stopping it from using all the resources of the host operating system. If there is a resource intensive process that is running, there is nothing stopping it from using the 100% of the memory or the CPU from the host operating system. And that is where the C groups come in. And it's important in the world of containers, right? So you will have a bare metal, you will have a hardware, and you will be deploying tens and many number of containers, and it's important for the containers to make sure there is this resource limitation applied, so that the resource is not exhausted in the host system. And that is where the C groups are going to help us. So control groups are nothing but the C groups allow kernel imposed isolation on resources like memory and CPU. So this control groups makes it possible to impose an isolation on resources, so that the amount of memory that you specify, the kernel will make sure that this particular process that is running or executing will not take resource beyond the limit that is specified. So the kernel exposes C groups through this directory, sysfsc group. So sys is kind of similar to the proc directory. So proc, as we seen earlier, it has all the process and system related information. So sys is also similar to proc. It holds all the system related information. And C groups helps us to partition CPU time, system memory, disk and network bandwidth, whatnot. We are not going to dive deep into C groups, but we are going to see like how C groups can be leveraged to limit the system memory and make sure that the process doesn't go beyond the specified memory. Okay, and we'll also look at tasks. Our tasks are nothing but it's a simple file. Task is a simple file which we'll see now. The task holds all the list of process ID that needs to be executed in a particular C group. Okay, so I'll quickly get into a demo to see like what to see C groups in action. To see all the list of available C groups, I need to go into the folder sys fs C groups. Okay, so it's not C groups, it's C group. Okay, so if I see here, we'll be able to see the list of C groups available. CPU is responsible for managing the CPU related partitioning, and memory is responsible for memory related partitioning. And there are so many things that you could explore on your own. We are interested in this memory folder. Let's quickly peek into just export this directory to a variable so that it will be easy for me to access. Okay, so okay, so when I get into this memory folder, right, I am able to see all these files, the memory limit in bytes, memory usage in bytes. There are so many folders. We need not worry about any of these things, but the thing that is very much interested is that the memory.limit in bytes folder and the tasks file. Okay, let's quickly peek into what this tasks file has. So this task file is nothing but a file which holds the process identifiers. So if you wanted to execute a particular process in a C group that you have created, you need to add that process into this file. Okay. So what we are going to do now is we are going to create a directory inside the C group. I'll just copy it for. Okay. So what I'm going to do is inside the memory folder, I'm going to create a folder Geeknight November. So this is a new folder that is getting created. Okay, so the file is already existing. I'll just remove it. Or I could use a different name. I'll just use a different name. Okay, I just can create this. Now if I list it, CG, so this folder is something that I created just now, but I am able to see all these files that are pre-populated or pre-created for me. So that is something that is taken care by the kernel. So if I create a folder inside the memory C group directory, the kernel takes care of creating all the necessary files for me. Okay, so let's quickly peek into the tasks file inside GN November, and the tasks files is empty, meaning that this GN November C group doesn't have any process ID associated. Okay, so what we will do now is, so we are going to add the process ID. We are going to specify some settings to this C group, and we are going to run a process. We are going to run a small snippet or a memory hogging program and see how C group is able to kill the process when the memory usage goes beyond a certain point. So for that to happen, so we already saw, right, the memory related files. So I am going to limit the memory of this, the process that I'm going to execute to 50 MB. So I'm just going to give a numerical representation of the bytes, and I am going to put inside. Okay, I think that's CG directory, memory, Geeknight November, and then the memory dot limit in bytes file. So that's why, like, we saw what this limit in bytes, right? I'm just going to write this number, which is nothing but the decimal representation of 50 MB into this file, limit in bytes. And I'm also going to do print or say that when you execute this process, or when you execute the process under this C group, oops, okay. Let me type and swappiness. Okay, so in case the process that I am executing goes beyond 50 MB, do not use the swap memory that is available in the OS. Okay, so in some cases, if the process goes beyond the limit that is applied, it actually tries to use the swap memory available, and I'm going to say that don't use the swap memory by putting 0 value inside the memory.swappiness file. Yeah, so this is done, and okay, so this is the current process that we have now, and I am going to put this process inside the tasks file we saw earlier. Memory GN November tasks. So what I am doing here is, when this process is executing 31303, do not provide memory more than 50 MB. Okay, so just quickly cat it and see. Yeah, so the 31303 is there, and it also has an additional process which is added by the kernel, which we need not worry about. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to run the top program, which will monitor all the resource that is executing. Right now, if you see, the memory usage is very minimal. The CPU usage is at less than 1%. I'm going to execute a script which will basically hog the memory. And as soon as I execute it, you could see here the memory percentage increase for this Python script. So right now the CPU usage is 99.3, and the memory usage came up to 10 MB, and the percentage is 2.3, and it steadily increases. So this is so let's see where it stops. So it's 4.4 now. It continues, and it got killed. Okay, so the process automatically got killed. So the reason being, it stopped at 4.4. So this is a virtual machine with 1 GB of memory. So as soon as it reaches less than 5%, which is nothing but the 50 MB, the process got killed. And this is how C groups are leveraged in the container world to limit the network bandwidth, the data bandwidth, the CPU usage, the memory usage. All those things are achieved using the kernel feature C groups. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all we have for today. I'll just quickly park here stop here in case if there are any questions.
No other questions, Shakti?
Okay, cool. Thanks, Nandita. So some of the key takeaways from this session is, this session is not to give an idea that you should go and implement a container on your own. The container is already there, and a lot of effort has been put into. So it's important to understand the technology used for building the container runtime or the container ecosystem. So that is pretty much important, because unless and until we understand all those things, it will definitely be come in handy in case of debugging some of the issues that might be popping up. Yeah, so that's all I had for today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shaktivel. Next up, we have Sivaraman Arumugam. He's a senior manager from Verizon India, and he will be presenting on data to define customer and employee experience. On to you, Sivaraman.
Thanks, Nandita, and thanks, Sakti, for the detailed technical session. And folks, I'm Shivaraman Arvind, as interviewed by Nandita. Let me quickly share my screen. And what is our agenda today is I'll walk you through on some basics about data. What is data and how we are managing it, and how ServiceNow is going to help you to manage it data. Okay. And let me put it in the present so that you can do it better. I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Oh. So ideally, what we mean by data and how we can converting data into experience. Okay? So I'll start with one of the quote which I always like. In God we trust. All others must bring data. What it means. Generally, when the experience defined are attached to the trust. If you are building some experience for any of your, it could be employee, it could be your customer. When you are building some experience, that experience need to get a trust, that need to lead into a trust for your entire business process or your solutions. So only blind trust will happen only for God, right? All others, we need to have data. That's what Demings noticed. That's the primary role, primary rule we are going to apply when we are going to get the data and present it to the people. Okay? So our the bottom line is we need to work on data to get the trust from the people. So that trust definitely get lead into best experience for all of you, for particularly for your customer and employee. That's a quick introduction. And what is data? So generally, what we always confuse with data. Okay, so whatever you are getting is not data. The data should have some basics. Okay, it is really critical, and it need to you need to have data to decide your course of your business and its actions. But what will happen is sometimes you are not getting that clarity if you don't have the right data or right approach towards the data. Okay, now let me define what are the basic criteria for a data when you are getting the data. How first is about the relevancy of your data. You should think about, okay, how relevant my data is for the purpose which I'm looking for. If you are building an experience, it could be a customer or employee experience. You should think about, okay, I'm looking for a data. Is that data really relevant for the purpose which I'm trying to solve? That's one particular important element when you are going to look at the data. Another important element is the impact, right? So what do you mean by impact is, so is it going to make a difference? Okay, or is it going to be does it have any value? In other words, we can call it as a value. Okay, does this data has any value which can drive to some solution, right? That's what we call it as impact, or you can call it as a value of it. And second, the third important point is when you are getting the data, does this data really carry a problem set, right? So if you're looking for something, let's say I'll put a quick example of uh, the customer experience, right, or employee experience. We are running a program for issuing a laptop, right? So in that case, when you need to have a clear clarity around what is the problem is, right? When you are issuing a laptop, you should understand, okay, how things are moving, okay, how much laptops are released, how much you may need to have the location wise split, you may need to have the project wise split, you may need to have the, let's say, the device wise split. It could be Dell or HP, whatever, right? All these data elements, right? So when you're looking at the problem statement, one you can define, okay, how I'm going to get those data. If I'm looking for a problem statement which is related to a location or a city, right? So I need to make sure the data which is coming to me carries those values or carries those relevant. It should be relevant to it, right? And how that's very important point which I'm trying to make it in the problem sheet. And another important area is how easy for me. Okay, is it how simple? Okay, for this particular problem sheet. Okay, so sometimes what will happen is you get a lot of data. You may get it from multiple sources. Does it really? Is it going to help me to drive immediately, or what I need to do a lot of work on? Is it easy to drive to a solution, okay, or a problem sheet, right? So that is also another important relevancy, the value, and the importance are here. Then the easiness, right? So when it comes to the third, I'll move to the next slide. Generally, most of the times, what will happen is when you're planning, you most of the times you miss something. Okay. So what I would like to highlight, when you are going to get a data, how you need to plan it to get a right data, okay, or else to collect the right data, or else work on the right analytics, right? Uh, First is you should anticipate the trends for which you are going to work on, okay? Whatever trends you are going to build. So that's important planning when you are going to start your data collection. Second is priority. Okay, how you are going to prioritize your resources. What do you mean by prioritizing the resources, right? So, for example, you may get multiple data. Okay? In that, you need to have a clear priority. Say, let's say, first thing is my first priority is to, let's say, uh, in a hierarchy level, right? My priority to get the overall view of my entire argument, right? In that, I should be in a position to drill down, right? So, the priority resources, when I'm going to think about the drill down, right, then automatically the hierarchy is my priority. Like that, if I'm going to decide, okay, I'll take the same example of the devices, right? So when I'm going to think about the devices, what is my the priority, the topmost priority? Okay? So how I'm going to drill down, or how I'm going to build that? Okay? That is what we prioritize the resources, how we are going to use it, so that the data collection will be right. And another important thing is you need to have automation and self-service. What it means? What do you mean by the automation and self-service in data collection? So when generally what is happening is we have data and we have multiple sources of gathering the data. I'll quickly touch upon what are the source we are using it in ServiceNow. And this particular sources, right, set of sources, it need to be automated or should be self-serve. It should be triggered in a particular scenario, that is self-serve. Automation is set of scripts can run and you can pull the data through a multiple integration and push it to your tables with the right the correct mapping, right? Your resource map. So that's what we call it as automation and self-service. Make sure that is you have a clear planning where you have very minimal touch points. Even ideally, you should not have any manual touch point when you are going to collect the data. Right? Another important thing is we always need to think about how you can improve the service. Okay. So today you may have a different data collection, and so whatever data collection you may expect in future. So you need to have that how the service is going to improve. You need to plan it that also. So that you have your backup plans or your next steps very clear. And the last important element is you need to have the decision making with a lot of confidence because you're planning, right? So when you will get the confidence, when you have all the resources in place and you have the right priority, you have it done, and after that you have everything is automated, okay, then automatically you should have the confidence. So if you look at all those first 4 points, automatically you lead into a confidence, then you make your decision. Yes, my plan is done. Let me move on to the next. Till that time, please stay on your planning. That's very important when you are planning. So what it means, you need to start. Your start is the important part for your finishing line. Okay? So make sure that is you start right, so that your next finishing line is easy to use. Right. I'll go to the next portion quickly. That is caution. most of the times when we are collecting the data, we generally fail in some of the areas. Or else when we are deciding about analytics, when we always deviated in some of the areas, which is not leading to a right approaches. One, measuring everything, whatever we get it, and anything will be get. Okay, please try to avoid that. Okay, you may get anything, you may get a lot of data. Okay, that doesn't mean you need to measure every data what you're getting. So that's where I'll connect back my previous slide, right, when I'm in the planning, right. So you need to be very clear. I'll go back again to my slide. So you need to have very clear. You need to understand your trend priority. Now I'll come back. So based on your priority and trend, your focus trend, what you are looking for, right? Then start measuring. Okay, don't try to measure whatever the data you are getting. Every columns you cannot have. For example, let's say in a data, if you're getting a data with, let's say, 40, 50 columns, right? In that one, you should not think about, okay, every 50 columns is very important. You need to measure those 50 columns. It cannot be possible. You need to have very key KPIs which you like to measure. But probably, as I said, that I'll pick the same laptop example. Probably it can be location, can be your first priority, where your leadership team is looking for it. Then that will be your first priority. So now you decided your priority. Then trends. Okay. What about trends you are going to show? Right? It can be last 1 week onwards and last 10 week or 10 days onwards, like something like that. What about trends you are trying to build? Or we can call it as a breakdowns. How you break down the data, the dashboards which you try to build it, which is going to give a message to the people. Right? Another important point is time and target. What I mean by time, why it need to be why it need to be in the caution area. Okay. So, for example, when I'm planning for a data, okay, if I'm looking for a year-long solution or a year-long trend, then what will happen is I need to think about the data collection time. It should be at least 365 days before, right? So that I can get 1 year trend, right? If it is going to be live trends, okay, and in that, if you like to do it for a daily and weekly, then you need to make sure that there's those data, right? The time duration or interval which you are planning for a trending, that need to be your context. Okay? So what happens is sometimes the context of time is very critical when you're going to thinking about the trend. Okay, most of the times our failure happens in this particular case because we may thought of getting the data, for example, last 2 weeks or 1 month. When it comes to a problem statement, which is there for more than a year, or more than a month, or more than 6 months, that time if you are thinking about data for 1 month, then it is not going to give any value for you. So deciding the kind of time context is very important when you are going to start your journey of data collection. And another important area is the target. What is your target? Okay. Your target is, okay. So you may have, that's what I'm referring to. You may have multiple targets, your operational targets. Okay. So you need to say, okay, I have 1,000 laptops to roll out, and I need to make sure that those laptops are going to roll out in a 6 month duration. So automatically that will be an approximately you can say that is in a 6 months, if it's going to 1,200 laptops, 200 per month, right? So automatically you have a target of 200 in a month. So that is the target you need to fix it. When you are going to collect the data and when you are going to build the dashboard, automatically you need to relate that to the targets. Okay? So you should have a clear time and clear targets. So why it is coming in the caution? Because these are the two important areas where we always fail when we are collecting data and building the solution, right, on top of the data. Okay. And third important element is static metrics. It is very easy to build, but like in PowerPoint or Excel, right? So very easy to build the static metrics. But don't tend to have that static metrics when you're going for a data analytics or when you're going to do a analytics on top of the data. Okay? Because what will happen is static metrics, you don't need the complex solution or else the solution which needs yeah, algorithms and run multiple iterations and all that. So static metrics, you can collect the data, pull the data, and place it in the Excel, and probably you can easily build the chart, right? So don't confuse between the static metrics and analytical methods. Okay? So, or performance analytics. Right? So these are the two elements you need to be very careful. Okay. Most of the times when I work with my teams and the people with my colleagues, most of the time these are the areas where we always have a conflict. What is static metrics? What is the regular the build metrics, right? So you should be very careful what type of metrics you're going to do. Okay. And the fourth important element, right? Don't build a dashboard which is not going to help you to make any decision. Okay. So if you are building something which is not going to lead into a decision making, then don't work with it. Don't climb it that as you are working on the dashboard for your business. It may be for your reference, right? But if you have any dashboard which is not leading into a business decision, okay, or if it is not guiding you to make a decision, business decision, then it is not a right dashboard. Okay. So what is the bottom line is? What is the takeaway from this particular question is? Make sure that as you are work on what business needs, what your business is looking for, right? Don't try to work on what you have as a data, okay? What you have as a source, right? Don't try to work on. So work for identify the business need, and start working on it. Based on that, you can collect your data, you can plan it, right? So without that, that's the biggest concern in most of the times when they are working on analytics, because we let's say I have the incident data from all the particular applications. Okay? So we collect everything. Okay, I have the incident data. What I can build, right? So that's the way we always look at it. Rather than that, look at it. Okay, what could be the business need now? Okay? What this team can be? Okay, what could be the solution for this team? Right? If I'm building something, is it going to lead to a decision? Whether they can come to a conclusion after my dashboard is presented, right? That is very important. Okay, so please work on the business needs rather than what you have, okay? And as a data or what as a solution. Right? Let me move on to my next slide. Okay, action. Okay, what do we need to do? I said one is planning. Okay, how to plan. Second is about what are the cautions. Okay? What are the areas where you need to be very careful about. Third important element is action. Okay, what do we need to do? uh, we set the directions. Right? Now, how I can execute that? Okay, now I'll start with the metrics. Okay, metrics always need to relate to the goals. Okay, that is, you need to relate your metrics to a particular goal. So I'll take the same laptop example because I'm primarily a digital workplace leader, so I'm working in those areas and we are helping the team. So, so I'm picking the laptop as a best example. So what will happen is when I'm trying to deliver a laptop, same laptop example, if I have a goal of 200, right? So if somebody is looking at a weekly trend, how it is, I'm just putting the numbers little smaller. But generally we build the dashboards for bigger numbers. Right? So if my monthly target is 200, okay, so the metrics when I'm going to build it, okay, if our executives when they're looking at it, how we are trending towards the goal, right? So automatically, for example, if it is going to be 1,200 in a 6 months, so automatically it should be 200 in a month. So that's that flow, right? It will very clearly say, okay, last month how we are doing. If we are not able to meet the goal, okay, automatically that will lead to the business stakeholders, right? They can look at the strategy, how they are working. So like that, we need to drive toward decision making. Decision making. Okay. So the metrics is always need to relate your goal, and also it should matter to the stakeholder. Don't try to build some goals on your own, which is not very important for the stakeholder, right? So let's say the location wise, right? The location is split up is not really interesting for the stakeholder. Don't try to work on it, right? So we need to build that which is making a sense for the stakeholder who is looking for a metric. Right? So two elements in this, okay, when you are building a business. First, define your goals. Make sure that as you are building towards that. Okay. And make sure those goals are really related for your stakeholders. And next is indicators. Okay. What is indicators? Okay. So when you are building a metrics, you are going to give it uh, uh, a solution, right? Or else you are going to trigger a triggering point. So those indicators should lead to action right now. Okay? So let's say I'm going to collect the instant last closed instance. Okay? That is one of my indicator. Okay, number of closed instances is my indicator. Okay? So what it means, okay? Or else number of open instance or number of aged instance. Okay? These are my indicators. Right? So let's say if I'm saying number of aged incidents, which is more than a month, so automatically what it need to an action. Those incidents need to be had a serious look because it's already broken in the SLA. It's a at least skip the SLA, right? So that's the way you need to build your indicators. The indicators, whatever you are building, that the indicators need to lead into immediate action. Okay, that's something that you can do it right away. When you're looking at an indicator, that should trigger. Okay, this indicator is a concern. So let me look at that indicator and let me work with the team to solution it or else solve it, right? That's the way your indicator system. And as I said, okay, really the context of time and sorry, I lose that one more context we discussed about it, right? And sorry, go back. Yeah, the targets, right? So these are the two. When it comes to the context of time and targets, we also need to make sure, okay, how we are going to support that daily actions, right? So like supporting the daily action is another important area, or the behaviors. I'll take some time to explain this particular element. For example, what is the daily action? Okay? Let's say we have a help desk team who is or is a field service team who are on the field. Okay? They go and meet the customers, and let's say they start at 8 o'clock. They go and meet 10 customers in a day, okay, and they'll travel down. It's all data captures. Okay? So their commute is one of the data element, and their the solution or the instance which they work on is another element. So the daily action is one is the incident solution, another is the travel, right? So the probably they will start at 8, they will close it at 6. This is the behavior element, right? So when they're starting something, okay, and they're going and meeting, if we need to capture all those data, okay. For example, I'll give a quick example of how we can solution it, or how this the context of daily actions is. So we had an example when we started our voice of employee in 2011-12 time. So where we always have an issue when anybody is notifying an issue when they are working from home. So we need to assign an agent to go and look into it, right? Primarily, or even in some of our stores, when they're raising an issue, we need to assign some agent to look into it. So what happens is when we are assigning something, I'll take an example. If, when they are working in the agent is from New York, when I'm planning for some issues happening in Texas, right? I cannot assign that particular ticket to that particular agent. But if I don't have the right context setting for the actions, right, or a behaviors, okay, probably the travel time and the travel structure, okay, all those data, if I'm not having it, definitely I may assign it to that. Okay. Even if you, let's say, even in New York itself, okay, if there is a agent is in New York, another work is in Orangeburg, right? So that's again a problematic because New York to Orangeburg, you need to travel down again. So what I need to look at is I need to look at the behavior element of traveling for that agent to reach the destination. Where is he from, and how he is going to reach? These data also is very important for me to take a decision, right? So the context of support the daily actions and behavior is very important also. The travel is one of the behavior. Okay, daily action is going and solving, and go visiting the agent. Agent visit to the it can be store, it can be the customer places. Okay. These are the areas where we need to look at it very carefully when we are going to set a context. Okay, when you are getting the data. I'll move to the next part, dashboard. Right, when you are building a dashboard, you need to have two things. Okay, one, a clear story. Okay. It should tell you, okay, the start, what are the elements of the story, right? That should be a good start, okay. And the mid, generally when we have a mid of it, right? When we are middle of the story, there will be a punch, something like an interval round. We'll have a punch of interval, like that, and there will be finishing point. Okay? In the finishing point, you will have a conclusion, right? It's not something that is okay. We started and then it keeps starting, right? So you started, you have a punch in the middle, and you have a conclusion. Okay? So what it means in the dashboard is you started with the data, okay, your problem statement could be, and you narrow down to the solution, right? That is how you are coming to the, otherwise through the indicators you are coming, you are arriving at a solution point or your proposal point, right? Then you end with the proposal, right? So how you are getting the data, then you are coming to a consensus, that is, you derive to a point, okay, where you are able to lead to a decision. So these are the important elements when you are going to build a dashboard. So you need to build your dashboard like a story. Another important element is you need to understand the need of the audience. If the audience, what the audience is looking for, that is also very important when you are going to start. Okay, when you are going to build a dashboard. So, for example, if I'm looking for the help desk, right? I mean the agents, when they are going to visit our stores, right? So when we are building the dashboards, the dashboards can be for applicable for a multiple audience. It could be for the executives, okay? It could be for the even for the help desk agent itself, right? The service agent itself, right? So those they have a different expectation or a different need altogether. Okay, so we will definitely drill down on that particular needs of an audience. And what is the bottom line, and what do we need to do? It need to any of your dashboard need to lead to an action and a behavior. Okay, so it need to bring in an action as a solution, okay, or a behavioral change as a solution. Right, that is what your right dashboard can. Let me move on to the next slide. Okay, now we are going to let us deep dive on your audience. Okay, I'll start with the end user. As an end user, as a customer, right? What I look for, if I'm looking, for example, I raise the issue with the customer, with the agents, or with the company, or with the business processes, right? I always look for, okay, I raised it, I have a concern. I like to see that is where it is, how things are working. Are they really looking at it? Okay, that's what we claim it as a transparency. In other words, okay, building the confidence of the customer, right? Or else giving the visibility to the customer, right? Or a end user in case if you are building a employee experience, right? So when you are able to build a transparency and trust, right? So that gives a lot of good experience for your end user as well as customer. Okay, whether the experience is going to start only with the end user, no. So you have other stakeholders also who's going to make a major role when you are going to build your dashboard, right? So end user is, yes, it's a critical element. They are the key element too, okay? But their expectation is very simple. Okay, and what will happen is, but building that expectation for them, right? It is very critical. It is very tough. For that, we need to have other important stakeholders who is going to help you to build the transparency. Okay? I'll go with the service owner. What does service owner mean? Okay. For example, help desk. So help desk, that there is a, let's say, a help desk at a team. In that, there will be a owner or a manager who is responsible for taking care of the productivity of the team, right? So in this case, in the help desk of help desk agent or a field agent, the manager or the who's owning that entire deliverable is the service owner. What would be his primary concern? The productivity would be the primary concern, right? So does he fail about transparency, or does he really think about transparency? In his capacity, no. Right? As a service owner, I may not think about it. For me, the data or the dashboard which you are going to build should give me a productivity details, right? How my team is productive. Okay. What are the what do you call, indicators which can lead to an action for the productivity, right? That is the service owner. Another is, I'll move on to the frontline worker. Okay? What is frontline workers? Is these frontline worker is the one who is going to on the field, let's say agents, right? For them, what is important? Okay? So when the service owner think about the productivity, okay, frontline worker think about the urgency, right? That's where we think about the priority. So when you're building up any visuals for the frontline workers, okay, you need to think about the priority of it, right? You need to think about it in the priority. Let's say there is an agent who is sitting in New York. Okay? He is looking for this list of incidents. Okay, you should build a clear. You should send to them the set of incidents. Okay, in a way that it should have carry the priority, and also some of the elements which we discussed earlier, right? Whether it is a you that you think about other factors, right? Like is it a lead to action? Okay, yeah, whether it is going to be a will it need any behavioral changes? Okay, something like long travel. Okay, all these behavioral elements, right? So these are the two important things. That is priority, and another is behavioral elements. Okay? So when you are giving something to the frontline worker, make sure that you your vision or your the the data from the data what you are going to get is it should be our priority or the behavioral changes. That's what the frontline worker will look for. Okay? I'll go for the next one. Okay, what is executives will look for? Then executives really, even though they really worry about transparency, productivity, priority for their respective teams, right? But his important issue is he cannot go and look at it every year whether a customer whether about transparency. But as a process, he can think about it. But as a report, he may not be really looking at it, right? But for an executive, it should be an oversight. What it means is the the concept of customers transparency part also they have as a oversight, not very detailed. Same way, productivity part also you have oversight, and also the frontline worker, right? They are also you have oversight. So how you can build that oversight? Okay, how many customers are closed in very on time? Okay, how many customers are closed little delayed one? Let's say 5 days SLA. In that 5 days SLA, how much is closed in 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 5 days? Okay, and how quickly we are, how effectively we are able to close it. Okay? So those are the elements which is related to the high level oversight. When it comes to the productivity, right? Executive also really worried about productivity, right? So the service one may need some detailed one, okay? Every location wise and everything. Okay? When it comes to executive, you need to build a little topic, 1,000 feet away above reports, right? So where they'll think about okay, what is the oversight of the productivity? And same way, the priority, okay, how much level one tickets are closed, how much level two tickets are closed, okay, how many people are involved into the level one, right? So these are they are high level oversight, okay? But they did not really look at it, okay, how every individual level one ticket, level two tickets, right? So that's the oversight. Okay, now you understand the audience, right? Now let me move on to the next slide. Okay? What they need. Okay, it's simple in one word. What is the question they have in their mind when they are going to look at their dashboards? Okay, one for customer, they'll think about okay, what is the status of my issue or my records? Right? That is their simple ask. So apart from that, they are not really worried about how effective your process is. Okay, how effective your executives are. Okay? How effective your frontline workers are. Okay? They really worried about what is the status. You need to keep the posted. Right? That's the first question they'll have. And service owners, how can they always look at it? Okay, how I can make an impact for the cost and quality. Right? So you are the dashboards. One is their purpose. Okay? What type of things they have, and also they have this is what I'm thinking the actionable items. The previous one is what I was discussing is about the behavioral, right? So this is an action. Okay. So this is a that's a behavioral one. Now it's an action. Okay. So here cost and quality, right? That is the immediate action which service owner will be looking. That type of trends need to bring into service owner so that it will make an impact for us the target, his goals, right? The front end worker. How for him, what is the important target is he need to think, okay, how I can be efficient, right? Like through the priority. If let's say there are an outage, okay, a bigger outage into two data centers, and other two elements are there will be some one of the servers load is low or the performance is not good, right? So what should be his priority? He should plan it effectively where there is a downtime is already there, right? So that's a way. What I mean by that is you need to think about their target when you're going to build up overall your vision or your visual dashboards, right? So just think about the front end worker and what is their target is to achieve it. Okay? They need to be effective contribution or else effective workers on the field, right? That's the way they look at it. That's what they will be. Okay? Probably, let's say, last if you're going to build a dashboard for all these frontline workers, you can tell them, okay, yesterday you work on two critical incidents and you missed one. You work on four medium incidents and you missed three, right? In that, he should think, okay, oh, I missed one critical, so that he will be aware about okay how he is doing in a longer time. Right? Probably it may be critical for him to close it, and in a longer time, if he is going to skipping those critical incidents, he should know the trend, okay, how that trending is, so that there will be an actionable uh, there will be an action he can take it immediately, right, to solve. So it need lead to one action for any of this type of. I'll come back to the executive now. Okay. Now we tracking well. So generally for frontline worker there will be an individual target. For executives, there will be a overall target. For example, let's say for level one tickets, we didn't as a target we will not exceed more than 2 days, right? So he is really concerned about how many level one tickets are moved to the second day or third day. Right? So that is the argument part. But for frontline workers, it is very important for his own areas, right? Okay, he's getting 3 tickets, and that two is critical. How I closed it? Did I skip it? Or else did I slip in that particular area? So if you look at frontline workers and the service owner and executives, all three of them collectively working on to give your best experience for the people. I mean the customers and end users. But what is the more
I think Shivaraman, your voice is breaking. Sorry to interrupt. Is
are
this
the
for me?
goals are the target
Hello.
that is coming.
Hello. Yeah, Shivaraman, can you hear me?
So any of your business processes, okay, when you are building any solutions, your stakeholders. Okay, in this, I'm just thinking about your customer, your stakeholders, or behavioral need. Okay, what they will be looking for. What is the action to take? That is customer quality for the other frontline. Example, as we discussed, the state. Can you hear me? Okay, Sukesh?
Yeah, I can hear
Yes,
you,
Sukesh, you're saying
Shivaraman.
something?
Yeah, like there were few lags in between. That's why I just interrupted. Yeah, now it's clear, Shivaraman. Sorry, you can proceed.
Oh, look. Okay, anyway, I'm going to stop it after that because after that I'll have the differentiation. And one is about the we are discussing with data. Thanks for starting to actually that's where we now. And let me give a closing note on this particular one. One is when you're building a business service, make sure you connect all of your stakeholders and their behavioral need and what is the action they will be looking for from your reports or from your results which you are deriving from data. Okay. I'll move on to the next slide. Okay. Now I'm going to come into the now part. Okay. Now or service, how we call it as. Okay. I'll pause here and shall we have a quick discussion about the first question that is about the data. Right. Now I'm going to tell you how I'm doing all those elements. Right. All these things. Okay. Whatever we touched upon. Okay. What is data? Planning, caution, action, and audience. Okay. I'll touch upon how we are doing it in the now. And any questions? Are we open it for a few minutes for questions? So, in case there any questions from the chat?
No, Shivaraman. As of now, there's no question.
Okay. Okay, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to type it in the YouTube channel, in the comment section. Fine. I'll move on now. Okay. What is now or service now? Okay. I think it's a platform, platform as a service. Okay. And it is it's something like APaaS, you can say application platform as a service. Okay. In other words, you can call it as a software as a service. Okay. Oh, but ideally, it is rightly call it as it's an application platform. As a service. Okay. I'll move on to next. Okay. I'm going to tell you about how we are doing things on sites now. One, integration. Okay. So, what do you mean by integration when you are going to collect the data? One is the data can be generated or built from your own source. Okay, that is the source of your data. But it's not always possible, right? So, but there will be a source which you will get it from the third-party sources, right? Through APIs or through web services. Okay? You'll have multiple sources where you try to get the data. So that's what we call it as a third-party integration. So you can integrate those data and those elements through an API or pull the data through an integration, and you can use that data for building an experience. Okay? And another element is, well, then you may have a different data sources within your own area. It's not a third-party sources, but within your own environment. Like incident is one of my data sources in ServiceNow, and catalog is another data source, and CMDB is another data source. And in the service desk, service catalog task is another data source. So like that, we have different data sources, right? So we need to be sure that we build the right data sources within us, right? That is on the integration. But in other words, the way I'm going to collect the data. Another important area is the data management. How am I going to manage the data, right? That is, it does not always lead into a dashboard. Okay, immediately I cannot go for a dashboard, right? So I need to have rows and columns built, right? So that it can lead into a dashboard, right? Or else it can lead into a report. So I need to be very clear how I'm going to build the dashboard. Okay, I mean, for based on that, I need to manage the data. So then I have rows and columns, right? That should be very clearly defined. Okay? How we are going to build it, so that this rows and columns can be visible to the our team who is working on the building the dashboards, right? So the dashboard probably, but for executives and others it may not be needed, but for us, when you are going to build the solution, right? Or when you are going to build the visual dashboards, you need to know that is how this data is all aligned. Right? So that's what we call it as a data management. How it is being stored and displayed. That is simple. So stored is rows and columns. How you placed it, and displayed how you are going to make it visible. You are set up differently, right? So it can be through a table structure. In ServiceNow, it will be only in the process. Okay? And third element is diagnostics. Okay? So what it means is, okay, it is primarily, it's not only performance related to service, and also related to anything related to the data which is coming in, right? So it can be from Datadog, it can be any of your monitoring systems, right? And or debugging logs. So that's what we call it as a diagnostic related data. Right? It can be from our own database, our own platform, and also you can gather from multiple sources from outside. Okay. The last part is our visualization. Okay, that's we built it from the reporting analytics. These are the four key pillars which we on top of which we are building our solution for service now. Our solution in the sense that I'm claiming it as the performance analytics solution. Okay, let me move on to the next little drill down. I just all these four elements I quickly drill down a little. I think we are already 6:40. I'll make it a little quicker. Inputs, right? And when you are having a data in Excel or any CSV or different format, okay, we have a service mapping. Okay, you can take the data and you can map it with you can create a table, and you can get a Excel or CSV file or any hardcode files. You can import it, and when you are importing, you can map it, right, to the service mapping. So it will be, for example, you have five columns in your Excel. It may be you have the order may be a little different to your tables. So you can simply map it. Okay, this is the service mapping, so that the data will be inserted in the right column in your table, which it may be a different column in your Excel. So that's what we call that. It's a service now is having a really intelligent service mapping where you can pull in any data, any unstructured data, or unformed data, and you can make it a real structure when it comes to your table, right? So that's very important element. You may not have a column there, but you can any of the rows you can make it as a column. So that's very important when it comes to the units. Mid service, it's an essential services as part of service now, where we need to have a layer between the service platform and the users or your external communications or the integrations. Okay, so that's what we mid service. It's a primarily a communications, right? A communication channel. So it handles the data between the application which is going to comes in from the web services or any other outside services. As I said, the third party sources. Right? So mid server is going to be your interaction. So that is also very important when you're going to get data. Okay. So why very important is it is also decides okay, your level of encryption, right? Whether these data need to go to your service, right? Whether these data need to go to your tables in the same way, right? you may get a data which may be a little sensitive too, right? So those are the areas where you can do some sort of, we can say some trimming, okay, or filtering your data when it comes from the third-party sources in the mid service, okay, through the web service. And the next important integration which we always do is the LDAP integration. I think probably most of us will know that as what is LDAP integration is, right? So just for the users and the root data, so that the logging or anything related to the hierarchical downs, all those things will be done through the LDAP. The last important element is web services. Web service integration is the rest are suite services, and it's also we can upload it to I mean we can call it through CSV file, but CSV file as I said in the inputs. That's on the integration. Data management, I'll make it a little quicker. How are we managing the data? We manage the data in multiple forms. One is forms. This is something that if it is an instant, we have a set of forms or a simple form. It will have a row of labels and a text box. That's an example. So we will make sure sometimes it's not a text box, it can be a drop down list. Okay. Those are the elements which decides, okay, what type of choices I'll make, and even that will lead into my trends and also my action, right? So farms, based on your reports, based on your vision, how you are going to build it. That if you like to do that, you need to have your clear farm plans. Okay? You need to build your farm very clear, which is going to really lead and help you to build your trends. Because if you're not collecting the data from the users or if you're not generating the data, then definitely it will be tough for you to build a trend on it, right? And manage the choices. Okay? So you need to have the right choices for every field, right? It can be, well, let's say, okay, for example, let's say locations, right? You cannot have a bigger, lengthy locations where you will be tough to implement when you are going to build the reports, right? So, or else, in other words, what I can say is the value should not, instead of text, you should not go for numbers, right? Then it will you cannot get the right reports, right? So, set up permitted values, we need to make sure that you clearly put a value for every piece, right? Particularly parameter values. And the tables, yes, it's very, as you know, all creating and managing the tables. And dictionaries, is a table, particularly what we call this as a dictionary is type of collections, right? So we can say that is uh, related to incidents can be a set of dictionaries, right? What type of the dictionaries could be like low, high. This is one of the dictionaries for it is going to be severity. So like that, we need to build a dictionary for most of your type of collections, and that's for the dictionaries. And the templates you should have a different variety of mechanism to record the specific value, right? So that's why we call it as a template. You should have a built-in template which need to collect the right data or record the right data. So through a different mechanism, it should not deviate even if you have a different forms, right? So that's a template. For example, if it's going to be catalog form, we have our own templates. We should make sure that that is a request, right? That is as well as the date and time or requested for. These are the basic needs when you're going to build any forms. So that's we call it as a basic template. So that's a template. That's also available in Solid. Number maintenance, as you are, that's also another critical area. In our earlier elements, we call it as indexing. Now it is sequential numbering and so it's not. So number maintenance is another important element in server side. And that's something that is it is an automated process which will maintain the number. As I touched upon earlier, diagnostics, session debugging. So whatever sessions, the user sessions, and even any specific sessions related to the modules, right? Module level sessions. Those are the logs or data which will be available for you to diagnostics. So that's the way we need to classify your data. And system logs, that's also another area which will help you to diagnose your problem. Okay. So and also transaction logs. Okay? The user may be logging in, you may do reports in your browser or in your system. So those level transaction logs also need to be put in. So this also leads to a better experience, right? So users is not it's not always the experience is not always related to what you give it to them. Okay, The experience is also very much important on how you are, whatever you solution given to them, how it is working for you, right? That is also very, that's what the diagnostic. That is also it's a built-in feature in ServiceNow, which is already applicable. And reporting analytics, that's a key factor. Okay, reports you can create, view, and schedule your reports. Metrics, you can clearly define your metrics. Okay? Metric definition can be done, and also you can have a separate vertical success. And in the performance analytics part, you can define an indicators, like I said earlier, and close indicators can be another indicator, and escalate indicators can be another indicator. And you can also collect the data, okay, through a data collection jobs. And because these indicators primarily define the, what is the data you're looking for. These jobs will collect those data and build it and make it available. Target is, as we discussed earlier, target is another important area where we have setting the target. That's also another key element in the performance analytics. Analytics hub, that's where all these elements will come in. To build any new indicator. Okay. So that's all. It's a hub where you can build anything related to analytics, where your indicator is one element, okay, or measures you can have another element, right? So these are the areas which we can do it. Finally, the last but not least, that is the dashboards. That's very critical part. That's what we are primarily looking at. Dashboard, it's all backend elements. Whatever you're looking at it, it's all backend elements. Dashboard is the one where everything is going to look at. So that's another important element of reporting analytics, which is already available in Salesforce. With that, come to a conclusion of this, Madak. I quickly stop for a few minutes if you have any questions. Casey, is there any questions for us?
Um, no, sure, Raman. So we are finally this now. Yeah, Nandita, are you there?
Yeah. Uh, Thank you, Sir Raman. With that, we've reached the end of today's Geek Night. Thank you for being here today, and please provide us with your feedback. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and probably I'll take another 5 minutes to exit another sessions. Well, I'll take another 5 minutes to walk you through these elements which is already available in Satsang.
Sure, Raman.
So whatever I mentioned,
Yeah, we have another.
whatever I mentioned, these four elements. So I'll not go in detail. Probably let me quickly show you that how this work looks like. Yeah. So this is what I'm referring to: data management. Okay, you can personalize your fonts, personalize your choices. Okay, you can create a table and manage the tables. This is what that is. And back to and diagnostic. That's where we are gathering and shipping all of our uh, session slots. Where you can diagnose your sessions. Diagnose it. See, it will tell you governance data, queries, quota rules. These all primarily it is all that's what I mentioned, session diagramming, transaction logs and system logs. These are the three elements which is leading into all these metrics. And integration. That's a very straightforward one. So you can see different integrations and it goes LDAP integration websites. It's all it's just configurable guys, it's very simple to do. You don't need to code anything specifically. It's just a configuration. Service Now is completely on a configuration type. Yes, we do have development, and it's particularly on those configuration on those widgets how to build it. But primarily, it is easy to build it within this browser. You can do everything. But that's a beauty of Service Now. Okay. It looks like I'm ending up with marketing Service Now. So it's not that. I'm just explaining that how simple it is, how easy we are managing things with the data. Okay. So ideally, managing the data, building the dashboard is a little complicated. We need to go through multiple algorithms, but here it is very simple in nature. And with that, I'll conclude. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Shivaram. It was a good session, and we got many insights from you. Yeah. Thanks all for joining. We'll meet in next week night session. Stay safe. Bye bye.
Thank you guys. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.